The 2021 Volvo XC60 Recharge T8 is an amazing piece of kit for the price it commands and punches way ahead of its rivals from BMW and Mercedes in terms of tech, safety and luxury. But the party trick for the Recharge T8 over its rivals is that you'll drive past way more petrol stations than its rivals could. This plug-in hybrid can run on electric power alone. Thanks to a bigger battery pack for 2021, the Volvo XC60 Recharge T8 can drive almost 40 kilometers on full electric power. Which is why this is the car you want to be in during traffic jam. You barely even have to drive it, as it literally drives itself. Thanks to the bigger battery, you can enjoy that punchy EV torque during your daily commute, and you'll not have the noise and vibration from the petrol engine, all while barely using a drop of fuel. But what happens when the battery charge is finished? We are going to take this 2-ton SUV on a road trip from Kelana Jaya to Kuala Selangor to find out. This 130 km trip is way beyond the range of the battery pack. What kind of consumption we will clock? Stay tuned to find out. The results will surprise you. The XC60 is a 2.15-ton mid-size luxury SUV putting out 400 horsepower and 640 Nm of torque. Volvo claims a consumption of 2.1 litres per 100 km, but what happens to the consumption beyond the 40 km battery range? Which is why we chose to travel to the coastal town of Kuala Selangor, a place we declared as one of the most Instagrammable places in Selangor. The journey there will provide a good mix of driving and an amazing variety of seafood to make the trip worthwhile. We will kickstart the round trip via the B roads between Shah Alam to Puncak Alam and then towards Kuala Selangor past Ijo. Then we would make the return journey via highway to give a combined driving experience. We are really venturing into unknown territory. We kicked off our drive at about 7 PM in the evening from our studio in Kelana Jaya. It was a Friday evening and it had just rained. Naturally, the roads were packed in typical Klang Valley style. There was only one thing left to do: put the car in pilot assist and crank that 1400 watt stereo and just kick back and relax. It took us almost an hour to cross the congestion and to reach our first stop at Alam Budiman. After picking up 2 more passengers, the car is now fully loaded with 5 generously sized adults. At this point, the battery charge is almost finished. We had enough charge to sit through a series of traffic lights though. Mercifully, the Route 54 between Puncak Alam and Kuala Selangor via Ijo is relatively straight. And we were not being shy with the throttle, making best use of that super turbo 2-litre engine. If you are travelling here at night, be aware that sometimes illegal racers will take over the roads, which is why we stayed clear of the highway for now. Since we had just begun using the petrol engine, our consumption was steadily climbing. We locked the remaining battery power and charged it using the petrol engine, so we can have some sort of battery power once we entered the Kuala Selangor urban area. We finally reached Kuala Selangor after spending nearly 2 hours on the road. Since we used the battery lock and recharge function, we managed to generate some charge for the EV drivetrain. It was very handy in crossing the many traffic lights we encountered on the way to the fishing village. We finally reached the fishing village. It's noteworthy that all 5 of us did not feel any form of fatigue in this car. This is despite dealing with different types of road surfaces and some spirited driving on the way here. After 70 kilometers, our claim consumption figure stands at 6.5 litres per 100 km. Now this is equal to the consumption of a Perodua Axia on a similar type of drive. Let's see how the figures would change on the way back. The restaurant area was packed with people and we wasted no time parking the car and digging into our dinner. After dinner, we packed up and headed back home. For the return journey though, we opted to use the LATAR highway to see how this car performs at highway cruise. We'll be on the highway until we reach Puncak Alam and then head to Alam Budiman after. On the highway, the 2-litre super turbo engine, which puts out 300 horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque, pulls strongly. Mated to the 8-speed gearbox, it will easily climb past the national speed limit with ease. Combined with the softly set up suspension, it's a very good highway cruiser. You can comfortably travel for lots of miles in this XC60 with ease. By the time we exceeded the highway, we had already charged the battery to nearly a quarter. But of course, we did bump up the fuel consumption figure significantly too. By the time we reached the Glenmary area in Shah Alam, the battery had already been charged thanks to the battery management functions. This was helpful in getting to the federal highway past the many traffic light stops we had encountered. And when we did get to the federal highway, it was absolutely pouring, which was not a big deal for a mid-size Volvo SUV. All through, we were coasting along just fine with EV power, as we had charge to spare. After gunning that super turbo 2-litre engine along the highway, it was quite relaxing to drive in the rain under the quiet, vibration-free EV power. We finally entered the residential area in Kelana Jaya, and by the time we came to a stop, the instruments indicated that we had clocked an overall consumption of 8.5 litres per 100 km. The battery was fully depleted and we had just over 40% of fuel still left in the tank. Which means this 2-ton fully loaded high-tech Swedish SUV managed to clock the same consumption figure as a Peugeot 3008 SUV. And that's a 1300 kilo SUV with a 1.6 litre engine. In fact, the Volvo's long distance consumption over 130 kilometers beats the consumption of a number of cars with way less power and a lot lighter. This is proof that the hybrid powertrain is really efficient in producing massive amounts of power and keeping the overall consumption relatively low. It is so good that it beats the Perodua Attiva's best consumption figure we have clocked when we tested it. And this was achieved during a long distance drive, which we will explore in the next video. Because you are closest to a charging port within the city, plug-in hybrids post their best consumption figures within the city limits or within the first 50 kilometers of the nearest charging station. So do you buy this car because it saves more fuel than the Perodua Attiva? Absolutely not. You buy this car because it's high-tech, powerful, luxurious, yet challenges the consumption of an Attiva. It's a big family SUV with comfortable cabin, lovely and cozily finished, to give that comfortable ambience and smooth materials over simplistic design. It's a car you will love to commute in, even during the worst traffic jams. And yet, it puts out an incredible amount of acceleration on demand. Adding to this cozy, comfortable feel is the option to skip fuel stops. You don't have to get down from your vehicle, pay, handle that pump as frequently as you would in a non-hybrid car. Plus, the driving aids make it safer and takes the stress out of peak hour commutes. This is as much as stress-free motoring you can buy for this price tag. What are your thoughts on the Volvo XC60 Recharge T8? Share your thoughts in the comments and check out our full review. And don't forget to subscribe to Route Hunters for more content like this.